Welcome folks to another video. This time round we're going to be looking at drawing faces. I have done videos on drawing faces before. I do actually draw a lot of faces. I find myself, excuse the pun, drawn to drawing faces. At some point I'm going to I'll probably get a webcam, because I just wanted to kind of like show you my sketchbooks that I tend to sort of doodle in. I tend to kind of draw as much as I can when I can, and it's not just faces. I mean, I do all kinds of fantastical stuff, but I always try to keep drawing something every day. I think this is one of the secrets about becoming like good at drawing. It's not just about sort of drawing sort of ad infinitum. It's more about, obviously, learn the techniques, practice. But not just practicing and just doing the same thing over and over again, but actually studying, you know, drawing faces, drawing eyes, noses, mouths, ears, things like that. Looking at reference. I get this a lot, you know, in my time of teaching, you know, students not looking at enough reference. Just get images, study them, have a look at them. If need be, draw over the top of them. Just find a way to get into kind of drawing every day, and it will reward you. It'll pay you back, and hopefully, you know, you love doing it. I mean, I do love drawing. It's one of those things. I've been doing it since I was a kid. I've always done it. I used to get into trouble at school because I used to sort of draw a lot in jotters and things like that, and yeah, so you know, it's one of those things, because I love doing it. So you have to love drawing in order to kind of get good at doing it. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into doing a bit of drawing. So I've got some images here. I'm just going to zoom in. I'll just sort of show you. So I've been on the Pexels site again, and I'm just beginning just random images of faces, some youngish and some old as well. I think old people have fantastic faces. You know, basically, you know, the face starts to kind of lose the elasticity, and this way you kind of get these wonderful, you know, you get the sort of character, you get the person's life kind of, you know, coming through in the face. And yeah, I do like old faces, young faces as well, but you know, yeah, something about there's something of a story, I think, in old people's faces. So what I'm going to be getting into in the video here today is really drawing fundamentals. You know, how to sort of sketch out a face. So we're going to have a go at sketching a face, and if possible, do a bit of shading. If possible, even a bit of colouring. We'll see how far we get on. So I'm going to not necessarily like copy these faces. I'm just going to kind of use them as reference, and I might just kind of look at. I may even, you know, start on one of the faces, maybe the female face, maybe the male face. And so what I'm going to do here is I might just zoom out a little bit. And so really what you want to do is, I'd say before you actually start drawing, is get onto Photoshop, have a blank sheet as it were, and draw some circles. Okay, draw some ovals. Just have a practice. You can always rub them out, but I think it's good practice just to get into the habit of drawing, because all of these faces are kind of oval to a certain extent, and you don't want to be drawing like this. You avoid that. You know, draw like an artist, which is lots of mess, lots of messy lines. That's what kind of adds to the flavour. You don't really want it to be perfect. I've done stuff before where I've done a drawing and it has a lot of life, and then I get into rendering it and it starts to sort of die. It loses something. It loses the life. I don't know if you've ever looked at like animation drawings, you know, like Disney and things like that, and you look at the drawings, and the drawings are absolutely beautiful. They're just there's got something, you know, particularly when they're kind of showing like how they kind of came up with the animations and the little flip books, and you can kind of see page after page of the kind of characters kind of moving, you know, whether it's Pluto or Mickey Mouse or whoever. And I often find that there's a lot more life in those drawings than the actual finished, painted, inked up sort of versions. Anyway, so yeah, so get into doing some ovals, and then once you've sort of done your oval, you can firm it up. So for example, if this was going to be a human head, I'm probably going to do this. I'll probably do something around this character's face here, this person's face. So I'm just going to get the basics in for now, just his basic. And again, I'm not following this I'm not following his face to the letter. Okay, I'm just simply using it as a guide, and I'm going to put my own stamp on it and see where we go from there. Let's see if I can zoom in just a little bit more. So something like that. Okay. And we want to kind of get. Obviously, he's got a beard. His jaws are going to be somewhere like that. So I want to get his basic kind of face shape. Now he's got quite a sort of bold face, as opposed to, you know, this guy here. He's got quite a sort of thin face. You know, he's got sort of a fairly kind of thin jaw, whereas this guy's a little bit more kind of robust. So I'm just kind of sketching that in there like so. So whenever you're drawing faces, start off doing the head. Now I know this from my students, you know, there's a lot of students who are not confident about drawing faces, and they will go to great lengths to kind of avoid doing it. I think it's because it's quite difficult. It's like hands. Hands are quite difficult. Feet are difficult. Ears are difficult. Noses are difficult even. But the whole kit caboodle, the face, I think it is quite a challenge if you're not kind of used to doing it. So I've got a basic shape of the head. Now, you want to start determining, if I just create another layer here, I think I'll just select a colour just to kind of illustrate this. You're looking at a few things going on here. I thought it was in red there for a minute. Let's try that again. There we go. So you've got the sort of top, you know, obviously the sort of top and the bottom of the head there, like so, right? It's kind of like what I'm doing there. Don't worry about the ears for now. It's just the basic kind of shape. What you want to do essentially is, when you're drawing faces, is start to think in geometric terms, right? So with this, for example, the head, we've kind of got like a circle going on, or sphere, more accurately. And then we've got sort of square shapes and angled, you know, almost like hexagonal shape. We've kind of got triangular shapes here. I'm not saying like necessarily draw this way, but you know, you can divide these things up to break them down. So if we're something like this, you know, you can have something like a kind of I'm not exactly sure what shape that would be. Perhaps someone will be able to remind me in the comment section, but it's a kind of diamond shape with a kind of there, I don't know, hexagon. It's not. Yeah, it's kind of hexagonal. And like I say, you can either have triangles there, or it could be just simply that it's just go back a bit strong. Could be that it's you know, something more like a square, right? It's more of a sort of square shape. Yeah. So it's just something to kind of think about there. Anyway, I just thought I'd draw them. But the reason I'm drawing this is, I just want to take some of this away again, is once you've kind of got the basic shape in there, the face, think about where you're going to plot the eyes. So the eyes, for example, if you were to sort of say split the face, so let's do like a sort of center line. Obviously this person isn't facing straight onto the camera, but you know, whenever you're drawing faces, it's probably a good idea to do your character's face as, you know, looking straight on. So you can see there, the nose is probably going to come somewhere beneath that halfway mark. And again, this varies. Right? It's not the same. It's not like a one size fits all. The eyes probably if you use that as a metric with the nose, you know, you could say the eyes are a couple of rows up, and the mouth probably somewhere, you know, somewhere like that. So if you wanted to kind of translate that over, say, to the drawing that we're doing, again, you know, we can divide this up like so. I mean, how I used to sort of traditionally do this, I mean, I'm just going to veer off slightly. How I used to do these sessions with students is I get the student to kind of like divide up the face, and then do something like just go slightly above, so kind of like there, go slightly above the halfway line, and then doing the eyebrows like this, and just generally getting the structure in. So, you know, you could sort of work on the nose. So the nose would be sort of, if you're going to divide this up, it'd be something like 2/3 of the way up, and sort of hash out the nose like so. I have actually done some videos on doing things like noses and ears and eyes and things like that, but and perhaps I could do another video going over that. But basically kind of get that in there, and then sort of work on putting the eyes in. And again, because of the scale of this, it's just mainly just creating an impression, you know, not really kind of getting into the just increase the size of that brush a little bit, not really going into too much detail around the eyes, but this is generally kind of how I used to sort of teach. And of course I still kind of teach in a similar way, but I think it's one of those things with drawing is it's good to, I think, because I learnt traditionally, I learnt you know, how to sort of, you know, doing things like life classes, drawing anatomy, drawing faces, things like that. But then there comes a point where you have to let go, and you know, I always say this to students, you know, you kind of learn the rules and then break the rules in a way. So it's just really getting those kind of basic principles in with your drawing. So this would be like a typical face that I'd be sort of teaching. Now, looking at the examples that we've got to the side here, if I just sort of go, you know, people's faces vary though. So like this guy's face is different to this guy's face. You know, if I was going to sort of attempt to sort of draw that face, you can see there, if I put it like side by side. Let's see if I can just move, I'll just cut this and just move it to one side for a minute. So with this face, with this gentleman's face, it's going to be, again, as I sort of started out, he's got quite a sort of square jaw. And also he's got a beard, but his eyes are different. You know, he's got a smaller forehead than you know, than the guy next to him. So, you know, with this is where I guess the point I'm making is you have to kind of play around with some of these measurements. You know, you can use these as some kind of metric, you know, of measurement, like, you know, with the eyes, the eyebrows, the nose. You know, I was saying earlier about, you know, that's kind of the nose is 2/3 of the way up, etc., etc. But with something like this, with this you know, with this guy, you've got this kind of eye level there, and if I just kind of see if I can just sort of quickly just sort of sketch out. Again, this is just more of an impression. And just looking at, he's not looking strictly kind of full on at the camera, but his nose is actually a little bit high up, so he's actually got like what appears to be a slightly shorter nose. So you've kind of got this. Let's see if we just take those red lines away because they're a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Just looking at it, and again, I'm not going to do any shading necessarily, but his kind of nose is kind of tapers in a bit like that. But obviously I'm not kind of putting shading in things like that. And of course his eyes, he's got these kind of just this kind of bulge underneath the eye, and his lid is the kind of the lids are quite kind of heavy over his eyes, as opposed to like this guy where his eyebrows are pretty much lower down and almost directly over his eyes. So yeah, but just going back to this, see the nose is kind of there, it's not kind of further down, it's not like the drawing I've done here with this character. His nose is slightly high up, and then you've got, I mean, it could be slightly exaggerated, it could be the camera, you know, the lens and things like that, but I think it's generally his face is very much like, so you kind of got this idea of or the impression, so to say, where, you know, there's a thing kind of going on with his eyes there, the smaller nose, and then you've kind of got the kind of bottom of the lip, and he's got actually a sort of smaller mouth, like so. But then he's kind of got this, obviously his chin doesn't come down to there, he's got, you know, his beard, but it looks as if his chin does at least kind of come down to somewhere like there. If I was to just kind of leave out the beard, you know, he's got sort of quite a big jaw, you know, sort of quite a strong face, and then of course you've got, if you come here, then you've kind of got, you know, the hair going on there. But if you start to add in things like the, you know, his kind of moustache, and then say the rest of the beard, it's just very kind of, you know, different shapes. Everyone's got different shaped faces. No two faces are the same, and stuff like that. So but yeah, but in terms of guidelines, that's what I'd sort of I suggest that you do, is that you kind of divide the kind of face up, you know, so create that oval, and then I'd say have a dividing line, so you know, you can sort of do things. I mean, faces aren't symmetrical, but at least you kind of like, you've got something to kind of measure it from. Because what can tend to happen is, you know, faces can kind of go lopsided, and proportion can be out. So these are kind of like, it's almost like scaffolding, right? And then things like for the eyes and the nose and the mouth, you can kind of map these things out just very kind of generally. You'd never start putting in detail. You know, you get it kind of sketched out first, you know, like I'm doing here. I mean, it also depends on your level. There are some, you know, professional artists who don't even necessarily need to kind of go to that length. They could just literally just start. They've already in their mind, they've got this going on, and they're just sort of sketching over the top of that in their mind, and they're just sort of doing the eyebrows and things like that. But yeah, so you'd kind of work out something like this, you know, with eyebrows, and again, just avoiding kind of detail, and then, you know, things like, you know, the eyes. But again, avoid things like this. Avoid doing your eyes like this. That's like a no-no. Or even, you know, just there are certain things where you just need to, I think, just have a bit of a practice, observe, look at photographs, look at how people's faces are constructed, and you won't go wrong if you're kind of using observation as your method, and trying to kind of build up your skills that way. You'll go a lot further than trying to at least create what you think a face might be. yeah, just sort of learn traditionally. So anyway, you get the general idea with that. So when it comes to things like female faces, again, I think what I'll do is I'll just rub these bits out here, and I think what I'll do is I might just shift these to one side. And female faces. So female faces, again, you're following the same kind of principles. I'm just wondering if I can. I'll work from there. It's fine. Again, so you're working from an oval shape. I'll just take the saturation down on that, the opacity. But this time round, like with this female face, it's as opposed to, you know, the guy next to her who's quite robust, quite, you know, strong jaw, head. Women's faces do tend to be a lot more kind of kind of elegant, you know, not so strong a jaw. Features are more, I guess, refined, if that's the right word. Not as hard, certainly softer features, larger eyes in some instances, but certainly the jawline and certainly the mouths tend to be a lot more voluptuous. I mean, generally speaking. So I'd be attempting. So if I was going to be sort of drawing this this face from scratch, so I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. Yeah, you kind of get that center line in there. Get it kind of sketched out, just generally, like, you know, like the jaw. I know, like, part of the, you know, the face is kind of covered up with hair, but it's kind of thinner. It's like a sort of thinner face. And you'd look at things like, I mean, this is how I work. People work, you know, some people work differently, but I'd say I'd start working from the eyebrows. Like so. And then again, looking at the eyes, I just start kind of sketching. And again, just sort of looking back and forth. Try and keep your observation going all the time. Don't just kind of like take one look and then just work on your drawing. You really need to be observing all the time, looking at the face, looking back and forth. It's a little bit tiring when you're doing it because you are trying to give it sort of 50% of your observation and 50% drawing, and that can be quite tiresome to do. So I'm just kind of looking at. I wonder if those eyes are perhaps a little bit small. I might just look at, it's either that or perhaps they're too close together. So I'm just going to cut that out. Probably seems a little bit more, and also I think they're a little bit more spaced out. So what I might do is take the eye out. I'll just crunch that down, press Ctrl E just so it merges it down onto the other layer there. And yeah, there seems to be a bit more space. I'm just looking on the bridge of the nose there. I don't want to get too lost in detail here, but it's one of those things where you want to kind of get stuff like this right, because this can affect everything. I think you know, you see this sometimes with work. You know, people are kind of learning to draw. They'll start putting in detail, and then it starts to kind of get out of proportion. And one of the reasons for that is that they get lost in the detail too quickly. Okay, so we got that there, and then again you can sort of adjust all this kind of stuff a little later on. I'm just trying to kind of get the basics in, like so. So we've got this kind of quite sort of slender nose. And again, don't worry about too much about the shading. And then we've got the mouth. So we've got this, you know, it's very kind of curvy lips. Just kind of curl up at the end. And then we've got this bottom lip here. And then we've got this chin. Now obviously this has changed somewhat, so I'm just going to bring that chin in a little bit. I'll probably just take some of this away. And just have a look at maybe this. I don't want to kind of like start putting in too much detail, but I just need to kind of get some kind of measure of scale. And then we've got, I'm just going to try and sort of draw in the jaw and the other part of the face there. And then we've got the, you know, the hair. Again, I'm going to leave a lot of this because again, this is quite, I think once you kind of got the structure in, the actual you know, rendering of it, that's kind of what zaps the time. And really in this video all I really want to concentrate on is getting the sort of fundamentals in. So once you've kind of got like that kind of like then you can start kind of like doing, you know, sort of tweaking. So I might just I'll tell you what I'll do. I might just, where are we? Just click on those faces there. I might just take a copy of that because I just want to kind of get a little bit closer in. So I'm just going to copy that and paste it. Bring that in, say, just to the side there. And come back to the face. And I just want to zoom in a little bit. Right, and then start just kind of looking at some of these details. So, like as I was saying, a lot of this can kind of change. It's not set in stone. So once you've kind of got the basic structure in, this is where you can start making some adjustments. Now, I don't mind using a little bit of shading if it can just help, you know, because things like the nose and stuff, it isn't straight lined like this. It's fleshy, it's pushing out from the skin. Obviously there's cartilage and there's kind of bone there, but to kind of give it some form, it's usually kind of like indicated with light and shade. So I'm going to start off with this part of the eyebrow there, but I can see there already, and this is where I might start to make some adjustments. You know, if I were to say stick with this eye, let's just take that down a little bit. I'd start looking at some detail, not a lot. And things like the eye as well. I mean, this is where you could, as long as kind of everything's okay structurally, then you could, I think you've got a pass then to kind of, to start putting in at least just a little bit of detail, like things like the fold on the eye there. You can start doing that, and this is where you can start to see your kind of your drawing, your painting start to kind of come to life. And things like, again, we've got this kind of slight kind of bulge just underneath the eye, and again, in terms of, just bring that round there, the eyebrow. Now the eyebrow is actually, it's not too far above the eye. Perhaps just put them a little bit too far. So it's kind of something like that. And yeah, you can sort of put a little bit of shading in there. So I could use, say, the smudge tool. So just kind of put a bit of brush in there, and then again, I don't want to go too crazy, but just try and give some form to that nose without going too overboard. Again, it's very tempting just to kind of go full blow and start putting detail in, but I want to kind of resist that because structurally there's still stuff to do, and I don't want to go in with too much detail. So like with the nose, for example, you can see there, if you look there, you can kind of see the kind of curve, and you've got these kind of lighter parts of the flesh there, but then it kind of gets a little bit darker just underneath the eye, and you can kind of just put a bit of brush in there and just work that round. And again, just putting that in, so you can see the kind of from the nose it kind of goes into the kind of cheek, but then you kind of got this highlight. And again, because I'm just kind of using, I'm going to use the eraser tool, just to see if I can just create a bit more of a highlight on that nose without kind of like starting to apply, other paint, like white paint on it and things like that. And again, just giving that a bit of shape. So you can see there we've got the kind of beginnings of a bit more shape to the nose. Like so. Again, I don't want it to be too big. I'm just kind of looking where the end of the eye is should be pretty much in line with the edge of that nostril. So if I kind of use my brush here, so like that should really, if I just hold down shift and take that down, ideally, I'm just looking here, it's probably a little bit just poking over, so I'm not too far off actually in terms of where that is going. So, and ditto on the other side as well. So I could be looking at something like that. And that's just kind of sitting, well, obviously because faces aren't symmetrical, so that's kind of coming in slightly like that. But anyway, you can have a play around within this, and but the aim is obviously when you're doing observational stuff is to try and get it as near to the as near to the kind of thing that you're observing as possible. Will it be 100%? Nope, it won't. But if you can get close, then that's kind of half the battle really, because it means you're sort of training your hand and your eye coordination. You are you're learning your craft. You are becoming more adept at with your observational skills. And then basically ultimately where this kind of goes is you're able to translate that training and then you can, of course, work from imagination, but you can also become a lot stronger, a lot more robust in terms of like creating your visuals for your character designs and things like that. So again, I'm just gonna just try and kind of give the face a little bit of shape. And again, I mean, this would be sort of too lengthy to go into in this video, but it's just really to kind of give you a general impression of where you can kind of go, when it comes to sort of structuring it. After this, so I would suggest if you were going to be doing something like this, drawing faces and doing it this method, I'd say stick with black and white so you can kind of get all the kind of the values in. After you've done that, you could then even overlay with some color. So this is obviously far from finished, but in terms of where do you go from there? Let's say you've got all the pen work done, and you're thinking, well, this is great, but I want to kind of make like a sort of color sort of character. I want to kind of, or whatever it is, male, female. Well, then you can just treat it like sort of cell shading in a way. I mean, you can either like go full blown and just try and do a rendered painting, but if it's kind of visuals and things like that, I mean, why not just say stick a layer underneath, and you can either get some reference, or you could just use the colors in Photoshop. And and paint into it. I mean, it's probably a little bit too pink. Let's just take that down a little bit. Let's try that. That's still a little bit odd. Again, perhaps a little bit too white. Closer, but yeah. So you could after you've kind of tidied it up, you could do some like essentially underpainting. You could look at stuff like that and play around with things like putting stuff on the eyes. You could put a colour on the eyes, so you could etc, etc. And you can sort of play around with that. Because at least then you've kind of got something to kind of work from in terms of you've got your values, and then also you can sort of work on. I've just gone back to the previous layer here, and then you can sort of work on, playing around with those values in black and white, as opposed to trying to get do like the get like a sample of those colours, like say the flesh tones like that, and then work on like, oh right, I'll have it like that, as and then I'll have a darker tone. I mean, you can do that by all means, do a little kind of colour swatch. But I'm just thinking, if you're if you're just sort of starting out, it might be a better way just to at least just stick with black and white. I'd say that because it's I think colour's quite involved anyway, and learning how to kind of master that is quite sort of tricky. And I think if you can maybe get to grips with the basics of at least drawing, and then maybe painting, and then and then sort of going from there, painting with the values, and then look into colour, and start off with basics. I mean, again, perhaps not doing faces, perhaps get some still life. Look at say getting the traditional thing is getting still life, like getting apples, oranges, and doing like a bowl of fruit, or getting a mug, or whatever it is, still life, and try painting that, master that, and then after that you can start approaching more complex complex things. I think trying to draw it's it's laudable, it's ambitious to try very, very difficult things, but I'd say, learn the small things first, master the small things, and you can't go wrong really. And then the small things can then turn into bigger things, right? Anyway, lastly, I just wanted to kind of just sort of finish this video with also looking at. Let me just zoom out a little bit. Looking at, let's see if I can just. Oh, I'll take that layer as well. If to let me. Let's try that. I'm going to have a look at playing around with old faces, because as I mentioned earlier in the video, doing old faces are fascinating to look at and to draw, and looking at these faces, obviously, like the faces have kind of lost their elasticity, right? And you start to see the history of the face, as I was saying earlier. And again, it's like faces tell a story in a way. So, but how you'd approach it is essentially it's the same method as before. So you'd be looking at, let's choose, this old guy's face. Now he's got quite a sort of long face. So again, sort of starting off with something like a square, or it could even be something like that. And you've got his beard. And again, this can kind of change. I might just take the strength of that down and start looking at, okay, well, his hair is going to be, I think it's safe to say, I'm not going to get into this, but you've got his kind of hair. I'm just going to sort of create a general impression of his hair, like something like that. And with the other stuff, like with the eyes, well, first of all, you've kind of got his forehead. So if that was going to, let's say, is where his hair's coming down there, and then you got his forehead, and you got these kind of like frown lines kind of going there, like so and so, and then you've got his eyebrows. And it might be an idea to kind of start with the eyebrows, really, because that seems to be kind of where you really kind of get this impression of him of, he's had perhaps quite a difficult life, who knows. But again, I think I'd be just tempted just to, this could all change, of course. If you're working on it, I mean, things like these very fine hairs. This is just an impression, really, and looking at things like the eye sockets. Again, I'm just wary about putting too much detail in there, but I'm just looking back and forth. So you obviously can't see me. I am aiming. One of the things that I was talking about today with a colleague is about these videos that I'm doing. I am toying with the idea of exposing my mug to the world, and perhaps having like a webcam set up. I've sort of avoided it for some reason. I don't know why, because I'm a teacher, and I'm used to kind of speaking. But I think it's just been one of those things where I've been doing these videos and. Over the years, and I've just quite kind of lock himself away and just sort of just doodling and doing these videos. But I think it might be an idea for to put a sort of a face to the voice, and you can kind of get maybe I can sort of do some expressions as well. Which might help to kind of communicate some of the things I'm sort of talking about. So anyway, but that's probably pretty much for the new year. So I won't be inflicting that on you just yet. But anyway, let's have a look at this. So I'm just kind of working back and forth like so. again, you know, just try not to go into too much detail. And you've got the bridge of this nose here. So again, working out where the nose is. I'd say pretty much the nose is there, his mouth's going to be there, the lips, and then his chin's probably going to be there. The rest of this is going to be his beard, right? And I'm just going to work on, I might just increase the strength of that just a little bit. And I'm just looking at the nose there. And again, like the woman's nose, it's the kind of thing where you'd want to, you know, take care of that. I mean, I'm sketching it in for the time being, but you'd want to really, ideally, take care of it with using sort of values. You know, using the sort of light and dark. But you know, it doesn't mean you can't sort of just sketch it in for the time being. So we've got that kind of going on there, and then again, there's his kind of, there's his moustache. Then you kind of got his and again, this is just an impression, so this isn't something that you're gonna go, right, okay, I'm done. This is just the beginning, as it were. And then you've got his beard. His ears kind of sticking out a little bit. And again, you know, these are all kind of details that you can kind of like, you can get more into the detail as time goes. But in terms of like the bit that I really wanted to kind of show you, obviously there's the drawing of the face, but there are these kind of bits, like when you're sort of drawing old skin. And I'll see about this if I can zoom in a little bit there. Like things like, I was just looking at this area here, you know, with the eyes. Now, again, just concentrate like I did with the female character, just kind of maybe just the one eye. If it helps as well, I'm saying don't put any detail in. If it helps, because sometimes you just need a little bit just to kind of like at least show you that you're on the right path, right? And so sometimes it's good to add a little bit of detail. So for here, for example, I just wanted to, he's got this kind of quite a dark rim going around his iris. And then of course you've got the pupil. And then I'll just use the eraser tool on this. And then you've got the highlights, right? So you can see in the eye there, you've got the reflections from the glassy eye. Of the outside world. And sometimes that can be good just to kind of at least just give you something to kind of work from. You don't even necessarily need to kind of put any more detail in, but just something that can help you orientate your way around, you know, the rest of the drawing. So I'm going to be putting in a little bit of sort of light and dark here, bits around the eye as well. So I'm just using a bit of brush underneath, and then using the smudge tool just to give it a bit of tone. like so. But yeah, the bits that I wanted to kind of show you is things like around this eye. And if I, so again, sort of how I'd approach this, and again, this is just how I do it, how, you know, how others do it. That's, you know, that's another matter. But this is kind of generally how I'd kind of approach it. Is I'd kind of get the tones done first. So I'd work on really not so much putting these kind of wrinkles in. I might leave those till last. I just really work on the tones, because otherwise you can kind of get lost in the detail. So I'd use that as really looking at that kind of light and dark. Getting all that in there like so. And again, you know, you got things like going on with the nose. And a little bit around the nose there. So once you kind of got like the tones in, let's say I was going to go with that, then what I'd probably do is go in, use that brush and go in with fairly light, and then you could look at things like putting these kind of creases in. I wonder if that's a little bit too light. And then, like, say around these eyes, so it's almost like the shadow. Trying to kind of follow those contours around the character's eyes. And you sort of get that idea, you get that impression at least, and then you could sort of work over the top of it. So you could even use, you know, if you were following this method, use the eraser tool just to kind of accentuate this, so you kind of get this. I mean, it depends what level of detail you're going for. You know, if this is like something that could kind of stand scrutiny of, you know, close up, so you could blow it up to say A3 size or A2 size. And again, I might just take that, blend that out a little bit. That, so you kind of got these squint lines kind of going on there. And again, I'm just kind of looking at, I'm just sort of going back and forth. I'm just kind of seeing these. I'm not sure if this is going to come through on the video, but there are kind of cracks there. And then you've kind of got, you know, like what look to be kind of like moles, or, you know, it could be like skin tags around there. And that's really where you start to kind of get the beginnings of, I might just up the size of that, and then, you know, you've got the kind of beginnings of the hair. And again, this is, as I say, now you're starting to kind of go into territory now where you're kind of rendering. This is really quite intensive rendering, and it'd be too lengthy really to do this in a video unless I kind of sped it up, which I guess I could do. Perhaps in the next video. Get the general idea anyway. But that's kind of all I wanted to show you really. I might see in perhaps not the next video, but in future videos, going through the entire process instead of kind of having a snapshot, actually showing, you know, and I'd probably like do it where I kind of like speed it up, slow it down, and you know, kind of do it that way. But go through the process of just creating an entire face from beginning to end, and looking at, you know, that whole process, breaking it down. I think just so you can kind of like follow along and even sort of do another version yourself. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it for now, really. It's been quite a long video, but hopefully this has been sort of quite useful for you. It won't be the only tutorial that I do on faces. I'll be looking at doing other tutorials. I do find the face fascinating. As I mentioned earlier, I do keep a sketchbook, so I'm looking to maybe get like a webcam just so I can kind of like go through and just sort of show you some of my sketches. I think that'd be quite useful for you. If you don't have a sketchbook, by the way, I strongly advise that you get one. They are invaluable, not only for getting down ideas, but also for doing observational things. You know, you could be drawing people, you could be on the bus, you could be in the park, draw people, you could be at home drawing something, or drawing from imagination. You could be in like an elevator, or on a car journey, or whatever, or you know, wherever you might be, and just do. It is really important that you kind of draw every day. It's really vital to start improving your skills. Apart from that, folks, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. As they say, if you want to leave a comment, do. I will always get back to you. So if you've got any questions about this video or any other videos, feel free. And until next time, folks, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.